All right, welcome back to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. My name is Guy McPherson. My mission is to raise the awareness of trauma and to support and inspire new trauma therapists just starting out on the trauma-informed journey. I do that with my membership community, Trauma Therapist 2.0, my online courses and workshops, and the Trauma Therapist newsletter. If you're a therapist of any kind and you work with individuals who've been impacted by trauma, I invite you to head on over to my website at thetraumatherapistproject.com. That's thetraumatherapistproject.com. All right, let's get started. Five, four, three, two, and one. All right, folks, welcome back to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. I am very excited to have as my guest today, Dr. Omar Reda. Dr. Reda, welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Guy. Pleasure to be with you.
So Dr. Reda is a global trauma expert, the author of several books, and a highly sought-after dynamic public speaker. He has extensive experience and expertise working with survivors of all kinds of trauma and has developed a particular soft spot in his heart for children and refugees. Dr. Reda is a founder and director of multiple projects nationally and globally that addresses psychosocial healing, recovery, rehabilitation, and reconciliation. He has served as a psychosocial advisor for several international non-governmental organizations, as a World Health Organization trainer, and as Libya's deputy mental health lead during the 2011 war. He's also the founder of Untangled and the Wounded Healer Models of Care. He lives between Oregon and Colorado with his wife and three daughters, and I think you might add to that later on. But Dr. Reda, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Dr. McPherson.
Awesome. So before we get going here, share with the listeners where you're from originally and where you are currently.
Yeah, I was born in Benghazi, Libya in 1973. I left Libya in 1999 as an asylum seeker, lived in the United Kingdom briefly, and then came to the United States in 2002. Currently, I just moved from Oregon to Colorado about 2 weeks ago.
Okay. So, wow. Okay. How did this start for you? How did you get here?
Well, my trauma story started at a very early age. I was 6 years old when my 14-year-old sister died of brain cancer.
Oh my
So that
God.
ignited my passion to become a physician. I did very well in medical school, and then I became an emergency room physician. I really loved what I do. And one day I came back home to find my father waiting in the front of the door. He asked me to leave the country immediately because I was about to be arrested and thrown in jail for engaging in humanitarian activities. So I became an asylum seeker in 1999, lived in the United Kingdom for
How
about
old were you at that time?
1999, about 26.
Okay.
So I went to the United Kingdom. My case for asylum was actually denied, was about to be deported back to Libya. But then I met my wife, who's a Libyan American, and she lives in Colorado. This is how I ended up in the United States just few months after September 11.
Oh my gosh. So you talked about that initial experience with your sister, uh, your sister. What did that ignite in you? I mean, I can't imagine.
Yeah, she was only 14. She became blind. We didn't know what was going on, and then when they discovered the brain cancer, it was very late. Unfortunately, the medical advances are not very good in Libya. So my parents took her to the United Kingdom, but it was really too late to save her life. When I saw my parents heartbroken, I wanted to become a physician, and I worked very hard. And I actually wanted to be a brain surgeon, but surgery was not my cup of tea. I fainted every time I went to the
Oh
operating
boy.
room.
Okay. So when you s- get in or you have this idea of going to medical school, it was fueled by what happened to your sister in a sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And how did the interest in trauma specifically develop for you?
So, in addition to my sister dying in 1979 or so, I was about to be kidnapped at age 11. Somebody, unfortunately, was pretending to ask for directions. And in Libya, it was very safe country at the time, early 1980s. So I went to help him out, and unfortunately, he was naked from the waist down, and he tried to grab me and sexually assault me. So I was very lucky to run away from him.
Oh my
So
gosh.
that experience made me very passionate about trauma, especially sexual trauma when it happens to children.
So how did that evolve? I mean, did that happen when you were in school?
I mean, I really was very involved in humanitarian psychosocial activities from very early age. Just my mom and dad were very emotionally available parents, and they made sure that they give me everything that I needed to thrive. But then, because I lived as an asylum seeker and left my home country, then the Libyan civil war started in 2011, and then going through the experience of hate and Islamophobia
Mm.
after September 11. All of these made me very passionate about breaking the cycle for my children, and that's why I created Untangled and eventually the Wounded Healer.
So it seems, Omar, that it's what you're describing is a life almost mired in trauma. I
Hmm.
mean, from varying, from different perspectives, from different degrees, and also, in a sense, fueled by your parents, who sound like they were pretty incredible.
Hmm.
When you got into medical school, you said you were thinking about becoming a brain surgeon, although surgery wasn't your cup of tea. How did things move on for you? How did they progress? What were you thinking about? What you wanted to do?
Yeah, absolutely. So the system is a little different in Libya. You go to medical school immediately after high school, so there is no community college or anything like that. So I was in medical school at age 17, and because of my passion about psychosocial activities, I wanted to become a psychiatrist, but there was lots of stigma in that country against mental health. So I
Mm-hmm.
became an emergency room physician, and as you know, about 21% of emergency room patients have mental health issues. So I was really listening to this trauma story, taking care of the psychosocial invisible wounds of my patients. And eventually, when I migrated to the United States, I joined the University of Tennessee in Memphis psychiatry residency program.
Would you say that? I mean, it sounds to me, and obviously correct me if I'm wrong, but a physician, and I would even go so forth as to say, especially an emergency room physician who is keenly listening to the invisible wounds, that's not commonplace. Is it fair to say that?
I mean, many of my emergency room colleagues, because of a heavy caseload and limited amount of time to spend, and as you know, unfortunately, the electronic medical system makes it, for the most part, you're talking to the computer more than the patient.
Right.
So yes, we don't have the luxury of spending too much time on the invisible wounds, and this is what I noticed that will cause the most dysfunction and it will delay healing.
So, how did things evolve such that you created or founded Untangled? And first, tell us what Untangled is.
Yeah, it was just an amazing experience because of my personal circumstances. So when I was a second year resident in the University of Tennessee, I received a random email, one that I wanted to ignore, but then I was very lucky to open it. It was from the Harvard program in refugee trauma, and they wanted me to join because I was the only Arab and Muslim at that time interested in disaster psychiatry and taking care of people with, mental health issues related to the refugee trauma. So I joined the program in 2006 to 2007. Never expected that the war in Libya will happen in 2011, and I will be applying these tools and skills with my own people in my home country. I created Untangled, which is a model of care to break the cycle of trauma. It's made of 5 different components. The first one is psychosocial education, so we can break the stigma and taboo associated with these difficult conversations. The second one is to build capacity for the affected areas by training of trainers. The third one is building safe spaces. The fourth one is building culturally humble resources. And the fifth one, if needed, some people need clinical services like hotline or an actual clinic psychotherapy, medication management. The model was extremely successful in Libya, so I replicated it in refugee camps in Syria and also in Bangladesh.
So let take us down to the ground level. What does that look like when you're working with this model of care is specific to refugees?
No, it's
No, it's
specific
not.
to trauma survivors. And so actually, most of the people benefited from Untangled everyday trauma survivors here in the United States and Canada. I'm trying to replicate the model, and it's not easy to fly to a refugee camp. So I do that maybe once a year. But
Mhm.
between my humanitarian missions, I spend most of my time working with trauma survivors, all kinds of trauma.
So walk us through, if you could, how this model of care works. What does it look like when you're encountering or working with a client or a patient?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing is to have a student attitude. I don't come across as the arrogant expert who knows everything. I rather listen to the local context and understand what's the current, services available, what are the resources, what are people coping skills, because most of them they have survived the worst of their trauma before they ever met me. So I try to build on their resilience, and then if there is any gaps that I can fill, together we co-create something that's specific to their context and respectful of their culture.
Mhm. And again, excuse me for interrupting. You're saying this could be used for anyone who's experienced trauma?
Yeah, and as you know, Guy, there is no one size that fits all.
Sure.
But yes, I applied Untangled with all kinds of trauma, and people had a positive feedback.
Okay. Okay.
So
So that was the first step in a sense.
yes, so you go and you do what we call assessment of needs. So you sit down with the, local culture. You understand if this is a hospital, a community, a place of worship, whatever your audience are. You sit down with them and learn from them and about them. And I always co-create something with them. I
Mm,
don't, fight the fight for my clients. I walk the walk with them, not for them, because I believe that's more respectful and less invalidating approach. And then if they're really pushing back against, any talk about emotional expression or talking about their feelings because of taboo and stigma, I start with the first component of Untangled, which is psychosocial education. That can be a workshop, can be a podcast, can be a seminar, can be something on TV or radio. It can be a talk in their local, place of worship, whatever avenue available for me to, convey the message. And
mhm,
then I believe in long-term relationships, so I don't go and do one kind of training or workshop. I do training of trainers, so I leave behind people who can carry this message, and I build the local capacity. And we do that through what we call safe spaces. So children might be doing play and art therapy, and then I'm talking to their parents, listening to them, and see what can I help the family with. Maybe there is some kind of family bonding activity we can do together. And then I leave the parents and go to the children and watch their interaction, make sure if anybody needs a specific intervention, we can work on that. If somebody needs more referral to specialized services, we do that as well.
how did you come up with this?
Was really almost a vision that came to me in June of 2011 in the active war in Libya. I just found out that many people are affected by trauma to a degree that's dysfunctional, not only on individual level, but also on a family and community level. So, trauma can make or break a family. So, some family members don't talk to one another after trauma. Sometimes the whole family unit will completely collapse after traumatic experience. I see the same with the communities. Some
Mhm.
communities become hostile towards one another. There will be exclusion, discrimination, racism, and even hate and violence, unfortunately.
When when you experienced the different experiences you talked about, your sister and so forth, and almost being abducted, um, and in addition to the world in which you grew up in, how did your family respond, generally speaking?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, like all of us, or most of us, I try to hide my suffering from my loved ones because I didn't want to be a burden. And we do that many times. We either try to do things on our own. We believe that we are independent and we don't need the support of others, and we continue to suffer in silence that way. Or sometimes we don't want to add to our family's burden and become silent, or we completely shut down. And that will add to their suffering because our silence is really more burdensome than if
Hmm.
we share our trauma story with them. So, what I noticed even with caregivers is sometimes because of our trauma story, we either lash out, and the easy target is our loved ones, or we shut down, and again, the easy target is our children and spouses who will be walking on eggshells around us. And that's why I created the Wounded Healer. This is taking care of the caregivers who are traumatized and inviting them to nurse their invisible wounds.
Hmm. You mentioned, or I mentioned in the bio, you have a particular place in your heart for kids. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know anybody who doesn't. So I believe in order to break the cycle, we need to really start with prevention rather than intervention. Sometimes the intervention, even early intervention, is too late. It's very expensive. It costs lives. It costs relationships. So my focus is really on empowering the youth. We do trauma-informed camps and retreats, and we reach out to children at an early age. We start these discussions with them, and most of the time, to be honest, Guy, like when a family brings their children to the office or the clinic or the safe space, they will point out that the child is the problem. And many times it's the relationship. Many
Mhm.
times the parent is completely burnt out, or the parent has their own unacknowledged trauma story. So we try through education and connection to resolve that. And really, the outcome is much better than if we ignore our invisible wounds.
I'm wondering if you can share an early clinical error. What you're talking about here sounds so inspiring to me. And obviously, you are incredibly inspiring. And yet, I'm wondering, did it just happen like this for you? Where can you talk about how maybe the challenges of creating this? Were there any challenges?
Yeah, thank you, Guy. And these are very kind words. I believe that my clients and the trauma survivors are the reason that I was inspired. And really, many times we try to acknowledge a trauma story when we don't have the resources for it. And sometimes people are not ready to tell their story. And sometimes we are not ready to listen to their story. So, yes, there were mistakes along the way. Sometimes I try to investigate the trauma story when people were not ready to talk. And that sometimes will lead people to really either shut down or even become psychotic at times, because the trauma stories, especially when it happens in the family context, especially if it's sexual violence or incest, for example, is a wound that's associated with lots of shame and secrecy. And so I really learned throughout the years to follow my my patient and my client. I follow their lead, and I don't really dig for the details of the trauma story. I rather just dig for how did they survive it? How can I build on their strength and resilience and coping skills?
We know, as so, are you practicing now as a physician?
Yeah, I mean, I have been an inpatient psychiatrist for the last 13 years.
Okay.
Right now, I am in between jobs because I just moved to Colorado.
What do you see as the kind of climate, if you will, of trauma awareness? How do you see um, fellow physicians understanding trauma or being more aware of psychological trauma and the importance of that in terms of overall health and so forth?
Yeah, I mean, even though the United States is seen as the most developed country in the world, there is lots of dysfunction and unfortunately lots of stigma still associated with emotional expression. And we have learned going to medical school and nursing school and therapy and social work schools that we don't talk about our feelings. There is nobody that we can trust with our big emotions, that really talking is a sign of weakness. And then also, um, we were not rewarded at an early age to express our feelings. Many of us, we have heard our parents say, don't talk, I just want to see you, but not hear you. And this is because of their own trauma and their own burnout. So
Mhm.
I believe that every parent is trying their best given their circumstances. They want to love their children, but sometimes they don't know how to love. And this includes caregivers, unfortunately. There is a high rate of divorce and domestic violence among physicians and nurses. And I think the pandemic just removed a band aid from very scandalous healthcare system. So no wonder that many of the nurses and physicians are walking away from the field of healthcare. Some of us are numbing our moral injury through substance use, and unfortunately, we lost some of our colleagues to suicide. But yes, the pandemics had brought a little bit of awareness. So these discussions are more acceptable, I would say. We are talking about staff wellness, building safe spaces, community
Mhm.
of care, leaning on one another. So I am encouraged, but we are not there yet.
What do you say to kind of newer therapists out there, or even new physicians out there, in terms of understanding trauma, being aware of trauma, and also how to work with individuals who have experienced trauma? Excuse me.
I mean, I would love if we can have a multi-layer approach. So yes, the physician or the nurse or the therapist are in the center of all these prevention and intervention, programs. At the same time, we empower everybody around them. We empower their families. We empower the systems that they work with. So it will be wonderful if we work within a system that believes in mental wellness and our emotions. That will be wonderful. At the same time, I think these discussions, even though they are difficult conversations at times, they are very honest and they are healing eventually. So they should be part of the culture at a very early age before people actually graduate from their medical nursing or therapy school. They should have these as normal conversations. And I would encourage everybody to have what we call self awareness because you cannot manage something you're not aware of. So, in order to really manage your emotions, you need to be aware of them. And many of us, we preach, but we don't practice what we preach. So, I want people to really, in order to co regulate with your client, you need to self regulate first. We need to examine
Mhm.
our own mental status. So, all of these will be very helpful if we are self aware at the same time, if we build support system around us so people give us feedback when we are not self aware and we accept that feedback and we give feedback to them when they need it.
So, Omar, I mean, you're obviously someone who's on a mission. I mean, if I may use that word, what's driving you with all of this?
There are a number of things. I mean, I think I made a promise to my sister
Mm.
before she died that I'm gonna try to break the cycle. I saw mom and dad, heartbroken. My mom died in 2016, and she was the driving force behind my passion and compassion. She is somebody, guy, who will actually walk onto a total stranger who is at the hospital or a family that just lost a loved one, and she will support them emotionally. And she does that every day. And one day I said, Mom, you don't even know the family. And she said, Omar, I know that they are struggling, they are suffering, they are in pain. Maybe if I go there and bear witness, I can take away some of that
Mm.
pain from them. So I try to honor her legacy through these projects. And also because I bear witness to many of my colleagues who died by suicide or decided to leave the field, I cannot really be silent anymore. This is
Mhm.
something that all of us have to fight the invisible war, the invisible pandemic. It is a silent killer, and it has been something that's overdue, and we need to do it immediately. And we do it not only for ourselves, I believe. I owe it to my children as well to break the cycle for them.
You said you were going to do a talk at a particular hospital. Oh, that was you're coming to Bend actually recently. What is your objective when you go and make such a talk?
Yeah, I mean, so the talk hopefully in Bend will be in December. I did one in May with another healthcare system in Portland, Oregon, and when I went and explained the model, I got lots of support from leadership of that hospital. So even though the proposal had many components, they agreed to adopt all of them. So what we did was psychosocial education for the whole staff. So the book is divided into four chapters, the Wounded Healer book. So the first chapter talks about the relationship we have with our clients. The second one, the relationship with our loved ones. The third one, the relationship with our systems. And then the fourth one is the relationship with ourselves. So I gave a talk every single day. It was a week-long retreat to all staff and the hospital. They bought like 100 copies of the book and they gave them as gift for staff who attended these talks. And then leadership, they wanted to do training of trainers. So we finished that 8 hours of intensive training so they can continue this mission. And together we created a brochure that was specific to their context, and it became part of the culture that staff will carry that card or that brochure. And that I was very encouraged. They told me these conversations became normal in that system, and
Wow.
hopefully we can continue a long-term relationship through supervision and consultation. So that's usually how I approach it. I asked what are their specific needs, what are their current resources, and what can I do to be of help.
So the book is called The Wounded Healer, The Pain and Joy of Caregiving by Omar Reda and is it Richard Malika?
Yeah, Dr. Molika wrote
Dr.
the
Malika?
preface. Yeah.
Okay. Omar, what's the best way for people to get in contact with you?
The best way is my website. So it's dromarreda.com. That's DROMARREDA.com. And my email is dromarareda@gmail.com. So DROMARAREDA@gmail.com.
Omar, I'd love to have you back. I feel there's so much to talk about, and you have so much to offer. I mean, I know we just scratched the surface of what you have to share. I mean, you just exude this intense serenity, but also this incredible inspiration from who you are in your life. And I just so appreciate you coming on here.
Thank you, guys. It will be my pleasure and honor. I mean, I will never change anything about my story. And if I can be a source of healing for others, I would absolutely do it.
I appreciate that. All right, Dr. Reda, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for listening and supporting this podcast. And if you'd like to join the hundreds of other therapists who are each month keeping up to date and informed and inspired about what's going on in the world of trauma, I'd love to invite you to head on over to the Trauma Therapist newsletter. That's the traumatherapistnewsletter.com.